Our government has begun the process to restructure the country's pension funds worth 31 billion cedis. It is therefore inviting holders of these bonds to exchange it for a new set of government papers. Here's more from George Affe.
The Finance Ministry, in a statement, noted that the invitation is intended to enable pension funds to preserve what government describes as their patrimonial value, whilst exchanging eligible bonds for papers that offer more potential liquidity. The offer is targeted at pension funds that have been invested in Government of Ghana bonds, the ESLA PLC, and the Dachi Trust PLC. The offer, which started from yesterday, is however expected to end on the 18th of this month. However, the Ministry of Finance maintains that it may extend the offer subject to how the exercise goes. Government earlier this year announced that it has reached an agreement with the public sector workers on how it should handle their pension funds going forward. However, it is not clear for now whether all the various unions are on board with respect to these proposals the government has tabled in its fresh debt exchange program for the pension funds.
Meantime, government says it is expecting some positive results from most of the economic policies undertaken to stabilize the economy. Presenting the mid-year budget in Parliament, the Minister of Finance, Kenneth Oyata, said Ghana will soon produce more domestic goods to replace imported ones. Here's more in this report.
Dating Parliament on the policy measures implemented so far in the 2023 budget and fiscal year, Mr. Oyata assured that efforts are being made to stabilize the economy. According to him, many of the policies will begin to yield results soon.
We have turned the corner, and more importantly, we are determined to continue down that path. Soon, we expect the measures taken result in economic activity greater than anything experienced in the history of the Fourth Republic. Our plans and programs should soon lead to a sustained increase in domestic production, including manufacturing and farming, replacing many of the products that we are used to importing.
The Finance Minister also hinted of plans to collaborate with the private sector to ensure a friendly business environment to attract both local and foreign investors.
Developed a framework for the V20 Climate Prosperity Plan to attract climate investments from the private sector, and initiated the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue to crowd in domestic and external private investment to underpin our growth strategy.
Despite challenges faced with revenue mobilization, government has decided to stay away from requesting for more funds. However, the minister announced a reduction in appropriation from 227.7 billion cedis to 206 billion cedis.
On Zoom with us, Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University in the U.S., Professor Williams. We're grateful you could join us. I want to first start with your view of the mid-year budget presented by the Finance Minister yesterday.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Good afternoon to your viewers. If you ask me, this budget speaks to reality. I will say that government is now admitting that its policies were not working in the past, especially admitting to reduce the GDP growth to a 1% percentage point. This is very important. There was one also admission by government in the way the accounting is done. People are not paying attention to it, but to me it's very significant, where government admitted that now the accounting process is going to be done based on commitment basis. What it means is that they are going to use the accrual concept in recognizing all kinds of liabilities into the budget preparation. That will really help us to ascertain the real levels of debt levels and be able to compute and know the actual figures. So these are my thoughts. For me, at the initial stage, the government is admitting to reality that their policies in the past did not work, and they are now going to work to be able to make sure that the economy comes back to normality.
Well, the Finance Minister is being criticized for saying that we've turned the corner and things are improving, and at the same time revising our GDP estimates.
I mean, the fact is that where did we see the turn? The turn happened, or where did we see the change in the financial economic activities of Ghana. That was pre-COVID. So if the finance minister wants to say he has turned the corner, then it means that the economy by now would have gone back to the pre-COVID figures, then see a further reduction thereafter. Then I'm sure that we will accept that he can say that he has turned the corner. But as we have seen, the economic indicators are not the same as 2019 economic indicators. So probably maybe he was speaking to give hope to Ghanaians for us to have faith in the economy and still contribute our quota. But we have not gotten to the stage where we can say that the economic situation has turned around. If you look at the figures coming from Ghana Statistical Service, we've seen that it's still moving up a little bit. So if I were the finance minister, I would wait to have some figures that were pre-COVID financial indicators. Then I'll be able to use the term turning the corner.
Well, so the government did not ask for more money as expected, but the finance minister announced a 21 billion cedi cut in total spending for the next half of this year. How significant is this?
I mean, this is very important. You know, we have all been talking about government reducing its expenditure. We noticed from the budget that the government revenue, projected revenue, also we are not sure of attaining the same revenue. So what is the prudent thing to do is to make sure that your expenditure is reduced. If you ask me, I will still expect government to work hard to reduce the expenditure even more than the 21 billion, and that has been stated. Indeed, if they really want to achieve the set target for the GDP growth, that is the 1.2% or 1.5% that they have said, this will require a further reduction in expenditure so that they will be able to achieve that set target. If not, this set target, if they continue with expansionary projects, this cannot be achieved.
So I want us to listen to the former finance minister. He has cautioned that the nature of the mid-year budget shows that government may not meet its revenue target again in the next half of this year or in this second half, as we saw in the first half of this year. And Mr. Terkper says government's inability to go to the international market to borrow also makes the situation dire. Listen to him and I'll take your views on the other side.
This is a country that has been doing tax reforms since the 1980s with VAT and everything. We lack the time, we could continue. But if you have mutilated the VAT and you want to, for example, removing debt fund and NHIL, from the base, and then denying input tax credits and refund to businesses, and it's increasing costs and causing inflation. If you want to come back to the old structure in the VAT, you have to do it spread it over a period of time, because otherwise you are going to disturb your December scenario if you rush it. So that's why I said we are in a structural mode. And let me also re-emphasize, so that is revenue. Expenditure. There's a reluctance to reduce, flagship projects. And even you can see in this review, a long list of them. Now we are using revenue, total revenue, to pay compensation and interest, even when we default with interest. So where are you going to get the borrowing? Even in our own domestic markets, non-residents have visited. So where are you going to do the borrowing to support this? Because all your revenue, I can bet, between now and the end of the year, and given that we don't have the assets, to borrow from the bond market, domestic and external markets, but get something from only multilaterals, basically, which will be substantive. It means that you are not in a position yet, to even borrow to support those initiatives in the next 1 year. And remember, there is a cap. There's a cap. As we had 500 million annually commercial borrowing, that's all you can do for commercial borrowing, with the exception of, the soft ones like the World Bank and the IMF, African Development Bank, which flow in. Otherwise, if you want to do something substantive, you have to go and get a waiver, from the IMF board. Right? These are the really, we've done IMF programs, so we should bring those things, experiences into perspective because they are not going to change.
That was the former Finance Minister, Seth Terkper. Do you agree with him?
I think he's right on point. What he has mentioned is true. He is speaking from experience. The data also speaks to it that from the rate things are going, it's likely that you'll not be able to achieve the set revenue targets. In economics and in finance, there's something we call the Levine curve. Sometimes when you increase your tax rates so high, it gets to a point it becomes disincentives. So that is where we have gotten to. The tax rates in Ghana are very high, and people are rather, instead of seeking ways to avoid or evade payment of taxes. And this is one of the reasons why we've seen a sharp reduction in the revenue for. We cannot go to the international market because we don't have the ability to pay. So as for that one, it's not something that we can really have a discussion on it, as he mentioned. So if I were the government, I will still continue with the tax revenues measures that were implemented with a compliance approach, and get the GRA officers to go on the field, stay in offices of companies and manufacturing firms and institutions to make sure that the people are being compliant and paying the right taxes. That is the only way to probably to increase the revenue. If government fails to do that, I mean, it's going to get worse in our revenue fall, because once the tax rate goes high, all players will start to thinking of how do we avoid or evade tax. And where we have gotten to a 22% of our VAT tax, corporate tax being increased, we've seen the financial sector not very significantly improved. So these measures will really are going to affect revenue generation, so unless it is through compliance. One other significant thing, the property tax, we have not seen it really significant. If government can ensure that individuals who own assets, property, start to pay the property tax, this can also increase the tax revenue in Ghana.
All right, just a minute. I want to ask you about one of our top stories today to do with a government indicating that it has begun the process of restructuring the pension funds worth 31 billion cedis. What are the implications?
I mean, this was to come, just that it was delayed. The implication is that it's going to affect payment of pensioners. They are due when a lot of people go on retirement. That is the implication. So, and probably we may also see it may cause a restructuring in the pension fund processes in Ghana. I'm sure SNIT through it may also have to come out with a strategy to be able to find a sustainability. If not, we may also see SNIT posing a significant losses in the coming years, which is really going to affect the financial sector and also pensioners. So that is the major issue I see, that at the end of the day, the individual pensioner is the one going to suffer. For us who are very young, we may not see the impact now, but those who are already on pension or preparing to go on retirement may see that they'll be suffering from getting their funds paid to them when they go on retirement.
Thank you so much, Professor William Supra. He's Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University in the U.S. Before we